Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. I am extremely excited that today is day 3 of Small Business Week, National Small Business Week. If you didn't know, the Pikes Peak SBDC and the Better Business Bureau have partnered for 6 years on Small Business Week, creating the largest week of celebration in the state of Colorado, right here in the Pikes Peak region. And Francis Padilla with our Colorado SBA District Director is here today. Say hi, Francis. That's the kind of support we get from our SBA. They actually come to our events, which is amazing. Kelly, thank you for being here from the SBA as well. With that said, my name is Ekta Markulier. I'm the Executive Director of the Pikes Peak Small Business Development Center. It's so nice to see so many familiar faces here today and throughout the week. So thank you for all of you who have been supporting us since Sunday for our kickoff and are here throughout the week with us. We'd like to say thank you to the Tim Gill Center for hosting us today. Hopefully they'll be available a little bit later when it dies down for them this morning to talk a little bit about how you can utilize their space. It's a beautiful space that they have here, and they actually have a couple of rooms that you can use. So, oh, there's Elise. Elise, would you like to come in for a second? Okay. So Elise has helped us coordinate this event. Thank you, Elise. Would you like to say a few words about Tim Gill? Okay.
Well, thank you all for coming to our lovely facility. One of our favorite things is getting to host events like this. Bless you. The Tim Gill Center for Public Media is owned and operated by Rocky Mountain PBS. We have our administrative offices here as well as one of our producers. And as we were saying, we've got 2 great community spaces. They are available for public use, specifically nonprofits. And you can go on our website, timgillcenter.org, and you can find out more information about how you can use these facilities for your meetings and trainings. So if you guys have any questions, you can feel free to ask our Kay Davis, who's our lovely volunteer at our front desk, or you can email any of us here at the Tim Gill Center, and thank you for coming.
Thank you, Elise. So as you know, the Pikes Peak SBDC and BBB, we hold a number of events throughout the year, and Small Business Week, as big as it is, cannot happen without our sponsors. So if you'd give your attention to the screen here, I'm going to play a quick video with a message from our sponsors, presenting and corporate sponsors for the week.
Hello everybody, welcome to Small Business Week 2018.
Hi, I'm Ekta Markulier, Executive Director of the Pikes Peak Small Business Development Center.
And I'm Jonathan Lieber, CEO and Executive Director of the Better Business Bureau of Southern Colorado.
The SBDC and the BBB are proud to partner for the 6th year in a row on Small Business Week Pikes Peak region, the largest celebration in the state of Colorado.
We're here this week to bring you some phenomenal classes by some great entrepreneurs, and we're here to benefit your small business to also make our economy better as well.
We're so excited that you're here to join us for Small Business Week.
Hi, I'm Tom Naughton, Regional President for U.S. Bank in Southern Colorado. We're pleased once again to be the presenting sponsors for Small Business Week in the Pikes Peak region. You know, when we look at the great contributions made by the SBDC office here in the Pikes Peak region and the Better Business Bureau of Southern Colorado and this Small Business Week activity, which aligns with the National Small Business Week, as a bank, it just made sense for us to be involved. We hope you enjoy the week.
Hi, I'm Dirk Draper, President and CEO of the Colorado Springs Chamber of Commerce and Economic Development Corporation. Small business is the backbone of our economy, and so it's a real pleasure for us to sponsor Small Business Week here in the Pikes Peak region. Small businesses, those with fewer than 25 employees, represent almost 2/3 of our members. In fact, almost half our members have fewer than 10 employees, so small businesses are essential to what we do. We hope you have a great week during Small Business Week.
Hi, I'm Holly Cordham, the Executive Director for Kaiser Permanente, Southern Colorado region. At Kaiser Permanente, our mission is to provide high-quality, affordable care to all of the communities that we serve. This year, we are thrilled to be the sponsor again for the Pikes Peak Small Business Week. There are so many exciting things happening this week, from the food trucks to the workshops to the awards ceremony. It's going to be a very exciting week. Kudos to the team that have been putting this all together. Thank you, and we look forward to seeing everybody this week.
So at least you could hear that. if not see you perfectly, but if you were with us yesterday and if you're with us throughout the week, we will be playing this because it's so important to us that we say thank you to our corporate sponsors and our presenting sponsors that are here with us all week long. I love it that Michelle just smiles at me when I look at her. There's a few more people we'd like to thank as we get started today. Obviously, media partners are a big part of who we are. So we'd like to say thank you to Colorado Springs Business Journal, the Colorado Springs Independent, Peak 92.9 FM, 740 KVOR, our KOAA News Channel 5, and then all of the other sponsors that you'll see throughout the week and at the awards banquet. Also, thank you to the El Paso County PIO office. You'll see Blake, Joe, Nancy, and Christian throughout the week helping us videotape, digitally record our events so that they will be available for you on YouTube, the El Paso County channel, and the BBB channels as well. We'll also post them on Facebook. So if anyone missed these events, you will be able to watch them later on videotape. I'm just kidding. I kid. Okay. With that said, we are now ready to start an amazing panel today. Colorado tops the charts. We chose this topic because, well, our region has received so many accolades lately. #1 place to start a business, #1 place for millennial growth, #1 national park. I mean, there's so many amazing ratings that we've got lately. We thought we need to talk about them because our businesses need to keep up with that growth, good and bad, for our region. So with that said, I'd like to introduce Rachel Beck with the Chamber and EDC, one of our corporate partners, who will be taking the mic from here and introducing our panel.
I felt like I need to yank that away from you. I'm taking the mic. Good morning, everybody. As Ikta said, I'm Rachel Beck, Vice President of Government Affairs at the Chamber and EDC. So my job is to advocate for business-friendly policy and business-friendly regulatory environment at the local, state, and federal levels. I'm also a former small business owner myself. I fell into that less than 10 employees category. I was the facilities manager and the accountant and all those things, like many of you. So I'm very pleased to be here this morning. Our panelists today are Michelle Parvenrue, Colin Mossbrook, Tracy Marquez, and Jeremy Shirley. And let's start by having each of you introduce yourselves. Jeremy, you want to start?
Yeah, like she said, my name is Jeremy Shirley. I'm a commercial broker at Olive Real Estate Group. We're downtown. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Tracy Marquez. I'm an executive director of the Pikes Peak Workforce Center.
Colin Mossbrook, I'm a financial advisor with Strategic Financial Partners here in town.
Michelle Parvenrue, and I'm the executive director of Peak Startup.
So let's start by talking about one of our recent accolades that Ikta mentioned that has gotten a lot of conversation here locally, which is that we've been named #1 for millennial growth. So if today is all about how businesses can keep up with the growth that we're seeing in the state and specifically in the Pikes Peak region, talk to us about how does that ranking change the way businesses should do business in Colorado Springs, or does it change the way that you do businesses? Michelle, you want to start?
Yeah, I can just get this thing started. So I work in a unique sector of business, and startups typically are not those companies that have 25 or fewer. They're actually growing really, really huge companies really, really quickly. However, they still have that time, and when they're still getting started, they might have only 2 co-founders, and they're going through that growth. But what we find is that we want fresh young talent anyway, right? We want fresh young ideas, we want innovation, and so you really do have to compete. We compete on a global scale for talent. And, we do have great universities here, but what we see is a lot of our graduates leave because they're finding better opportunities somewhere else. And I always advocate that no matter what, people move to where they want to be first. They want to move in environments that have the type of lifestyle that they can have, that have the kind of environment, the type of thought leaders that they associate with. And so we have that going on here in Colorado Springs, and we have this beautiful backdrop. I moved, when I turned 30, I moved from Denver to Colorado Springs because I got tired of Denver. It was too concentrated. There was traffic that was crazy. Everything became less accessible the longer I lived there. And coming here, we have a lot of natural asset that we can really benefit from, but it's up to these employers to make sure that they're communicating effectively to these millennials and not thinking in an antiquated way or doing recruiting in the old-time way, or you got to kind of change a little bit and evolve with the new times. And if you want, and if you see that value that a millennial or younger workforce can bring you, then you've got to change your dialogue and your messaging and how your organization is structured to be able to meet that and attract and keep that kind of talent.
I think that's a great response. And two, I think I would add that the employers need to almost start shifting the way that they work with the millennials to the sense that it's okay that they're wrong, right? We don't need to kind of bend over backwards and say, well, in order to make this person happy, we got to give them 50% equity in our business and only work 20 hours a week and pay them 6 figures, right? But more of kind of going, okay, well, these are our rules, and I understand where you want to be. How can we work on this together, right? And kind of meeting them halfway. Because I think what you'll find is when you get a millennial that's engaged, and I'm your token millennial for today, that they'll run with it. I mean, run with it farther than you could ever imagine. And so I think finding a way to give them that power and give them those shoes that they can start running in is going to be that key to unlocking their potential, right? And so I don't know what that perfect sauce is because every millennial is going to be different. Maybe just sitting down with them, having that honest conversation and go, hey, you know, I'm not your boss right now, I'm more of your friend. How can we make this work? What works for you? What are some things that you need in employment? Because you're very talented, I want to keep you here. What do we need to do that, right? So I think kind of opening up that conversation, which I think what you'll find is that we're very honest people. We'll tell you what's on our mind, whether it's something you want to hear or not. And so I think kind of digging down in that will help you as a business owner really drive those conversations and drive your business.
To go off what Colin was saying, he's a good friend of mine, and yes, he is very honest about things you may need to work on. As I was driving to work this morning, I was listening to a CNBC interview, and it was actually specifically this question. It was asking, you know, how do we retain millennials? If you look at the millennial workforce, on average, they're switching jobs about every 2 years. It's one of the rapidest changes in jobs that we've seen in any workforce generation. And it was surprising, the study that they did, they said it's not necessarily pay, it's not necessarily location, but it's about what the employer gives to the benefit that they give to the millennial. And they said millennials not the pay, the workplace, it's more so the meaning and the authority to act on that meaning. So one of the biggest things they said is millennials want to look for a place that they can actually give you know, purpose and meaning and do a contribution to the society, the community, and most importantly the company there as well.
You know, I would just add one to that is when you look at your businesses, you look at your company culture. What's a culture of your organization? Is a culture of your business one that adapts to all different ages and different generations? And are you flexible? You look at the millennials and you know, like you said, is they come in, they want. But I think as employers, you've got to be willing to change your mindset and change the lens that you look through when you hire millennials and really meet halfway. So really, it really boils down to your company culture. What is your culture? What is it now? And what do you want it to be?
Each of you has kind of touched on that, changes in business culture and how that can accommodate millennials. Can you talk a little more specifically about what are some of those changes that you see that are necessary?
I think one of the biggest changes, too, and a shameless plug for the Colorado Institute for Social Impact here in Colorado Springs that I sit on the board with, but I think we're seeing a lot of the demand driven from the consumer. So consumers are telling business owners that they want something that has more meaning behind the product, and they're willing to pay a better price for it, right? Even almost double in some cases. And so the consumer's really saying, well, we want meaning behind this, and employers are looking at that and going, well, how do we build meaning behind it without changing our whole culture, right? And a lot of times you do almost have to go back to that drawing board and say, why do we do what we do on a given day? You know, I kind of do that. I'm not a social enterprise, but I'll do that with my own financial advising practice because I got introduced to hospice back then, and the one key lesson I learned from hospice was being present is incredibly valuable. And being present is not sitting in an appointment and thinking about what you have to do the rest of the day, but sitting at that appointment and actually engaging with somebody is really, truly valuable. And so I will go into a room and shut off the lights and just become present, right? And think about why am I doing what I'm doing today, right? Is it here to sell life insurance and financial plans and investments, or is it here to help people create wealth and find meaning in that, whatever that meaning is to them, and help them build the path and steps to get there, right? So I think it's kind of taking back and going, well, why do we serve who we want to serve, right? And is our consumer reading that message, right? Because a lot of time you may think, well, yeah, we're doing all this great stuff, but the stigma that you might have on the community might be different than what you're trying to spread, right? And what we see is that the businesses that align those missions with a social purpose or a greater good for the community, maybe in the short term, it's a little bit harder to get off the ground because of the cost of the triple bottom line, but in that longer term, they're finding a lot more success and a lot more longevity. And so you're kind of seeing the shift in that business sense of, well, not only do the employees want to work for a cause, but the consumers want to buy from a cause that has employees that work for that type of organization.
Other specific thoughts?
You know, I'd say from a commercial standpoint, a lot of the clients that I'm working with that are looking for a younger workforce are changing the way that they do business in that kind of operations of a leasing standpoint. We're changing a lot of the floor plans, going away from the traditional hardwall offices and opening it more of an open floor plan, giving the employees flexible hours to come in and flexible work environments where they can work. A lot of the leases we're working on now is taking the hardwall offices out, open more community areas. I can go with my laptop and I can sit at a coffee bar at 9 o'clock in the morning and work for a few hours, have a meeting, come back in, maybe work at the kitchen counter, and then go sit in more of a collaborative work environment. So you're starting to see a dynamic shift in how offices operate, you know, from an office standpoint.
So there's been a lot of discussion in our community about workforce development. I'm looking at you, Tracy. And we talk about, yes.
Both of them? Got it.
The rest of you can take a coffee break if you want. And you know, right now we're in an atmosphere where our unemployment is so low. It's an interesting challenge to have such low unemployment and at the same time need to be developing more workforce. So can you talk to us, why don't you kick us off and talk to us about some of the challenges there and how we address them, and how do businesses help develop that pipeline of workers that are necessary?
Well, right now in the state of Colorado, unemployment is at 3.0%. El Paso County, Teller County is at 3.4%. There's over 12,000 open positions in both El Paso County, which is what the Pikes Peak Workforce Center covers. And if you look at that and you look at the people looking for jobs, there's more jobs right now than people looking for jobs. And how do you look at your skills gap? How do you look at finding the talent? And we always talk about growing your talent pipeline. What is your talent pipeline? What resources does a community have available to help small businesses get the talent that they need? One of the takeaways I would like everyone to leave with is that, and we'll get into these discussions further on, is there are a lot of available free resources for small businesses in our community that you can take advantage to help grow your talent pipeline. There's a lot in the K through 12 education system. There's the military. They have great transition programs to help workforce, and along with the Pikes Peak Workforce Center and other community partners. But you look at growing that, and you really have to look at your hiring needs and refocusing the way you're looking at people that you're hiring. Are you pulling a job description that you downloaded from the internet that has been around for 10 years and it doesn't really say what you need, and then during your interview process you want A, B, and C, but you never in your job description asked for A, B, and C. So really look at job descriptions, and also look at changing your mindset of your hiring practices to do more skills-based hiring. Skills-based, competency-based hiring is looking at, are the skills that you need to do the job. It may not necessarily be a degree. It could be someone that's graduating high school that took classes in high school to get IT certifications, that's graduating this year and has the skills that you need and has the work history that you need. So really refocus how you think on hiring. Look at your different populations. Some of them, you know, and I'll just talk briefly, are ex-offender population. We have a lot in Canyon City, you know, Fremont County, there's a lot of those leaving the prison systems. And did you know they have IT A+ certification in Fremont County Prison, state of Colorado prison system? They have medical assistance training that you get while you're in the system. You know, granted, your business may not be able to, you know, take those based on security, but really change the lens of where you're looking for people. Don't think it's just all on the internet. A lot of it is networking. working, and it's a lot of different resources in our community with our 17 school districts. All of our school districts have different programs for career pathways and technical pathways. So really start refocusing of how you look at your hiring needs are and making sure that what you need is accurate. And I'll just do one more thing and I'll be done. One other thing that we see is, especially with technology, is people are saying, I need someone with 10 years of ABC experience. Well, this experience has only been around for 5 years. You're never going to find someone, right? It's true. We see it all the time. So look at what you're asking for. What are your needs? What do you really, really need? And also look at maybe not doing a 100% match. Back when unemployment was really high, we were at 10.4, a couple years ago. And you can have 100% and more of that matching of what you need. But now you may have to look at 80 and maybe look at doing some on-the-job training and helping do more, technical assistance skills training than what you originally thought you could do.
Could I offer some thoughts on the other side of that? So I work actually, I am the ED of Peak Startup, but I also contract and I do other work also. And I do a lot of HR development and org structure for some companies, and exactly what she's saying, but to take it further, we focus on retention also, right? Like the cost of a turnover is really high for an employee, so what are you doing to retain your employees? And so on team development, I make every manager, I'm like, it is your responsibility to make sure that you're professionally and personally developing every single person on your team. Whether that's one thing at a time, or how are you encouraging them to making sure that they're developing and getting further, because then it helps you with succession, it helps you with promotion, it helps, because there's not ever going to be zero turnover, right? And so in your building, you're building your whole workforce underneath you just to be stronger and better and more capable. And the other thing that I encourage them to do beyond skills-based hiring is culture-based hiring, of really identifying what are the core competencies of your best employees that you want modeled from the rest of your employees. Like really what type of employee is going to be successful here beyond, you obviously, if there's a certain amount of skill that you just need to have or some kind of experience, but looking beyond that and saying, how do we evaluate behaviors, and just, are you going to fit with this culture? Are you going to be a disruptor in a good way or a disruptor in a toxic way? And how do you deal with that? And so, even understanding just what type of person does well in your organization, or that you work with, or that works with your existing team, and making sure that you're feeding that and being conscious of that as well.
I just kind of want to skip back to what Tracy was saying, because I love this conversation around kind of the societal need for a degree in the workforce, because, of course, being a financial advisor, the student debt is the one thing that I can't stand that I have, and I have a boatload of it for going to a local... for going to a local state school where I learned more in the first 4 months of my job than I did the whole 4 years, right? Going into personal finance, everything in school. I did finance, economics, and entrepreneurship at UCCS. Great school, nothing wrong with the school, but the program was focused on corporate finance, right? So I didn't learn anything personal. The one class that I did was an elective. My freshman year, there's probably 7 students in it, and the professor was the reason that I got my dream job right out of school. And so a lot of what I learned was the first 4 months studying for my Series 7 and Series 66 exam after that, though, and it was like drinking from a fire hose. But what I learned is that if you are, it might just be the millennial generation, but they're a lot more self-sufficient, especially when it comes to education. So the path of you have to go to get a 4-year degree is no longer that given path for a lot of people, where they'll go online, they'll go get a certification, right, and they'll be just as qualified as that individual, probably even more qualified that individual that went to school for 4 years, partied his face off, and is now, ready to get his full-time job, right, versus the guy that was focused on where he wanted to go, knew what he wanted to do, didn't go into debt to get there, and now he's sitting at the table with the same application. And I had this conversation with actually a business owner client a few days ago, and she was going, we need to hire somebody, but I can't find anybody. And I was like, well, what are your requirements for hiring, right? It was you had to have a 4-year degree, you had to have 2 years in the business, and all this and that. The minute that she got rid of those limitations, she had, I think, 1,500 applications, right? Blew it up, right? Now that's an extreme case, but when she sat down and we were talking about this, she's like, if I'm sitting next to an individual and they say, this is why I did what I did, it was with meaning, it was with purpose, and now I'm here looking for a job because this is the field that I'm passionate in, she's like, I will give that guy the job offer over a guy that went to Harvard, got a 4.0 GPA, and is here just for an income, right? And so I think societally we're really starting to change, and as business owners, we need to open up our eyes, right? Really look at that raw talent in front of you, and don't judge them by the sheet of paper that's in front of you, right? And so I encourage encourage business leaders here in the community. And two, what I think will happen is you'll have a lot more people chasing kind of what they really want to be passionate pursuing, right? You won't have people getting philosophy degrees just because they need to get something and graduate from their school or their mom's going to kill them, right? That doesn't do any good for society. We got kids that go in debt. They're productive people in society versus they go and study philanthropy and business and get involved with the social enterprise afterwards, right? It's kind of some different paths. So I think as we welcome that, and I'm not saying you got to hire every guy that doesn't have a college degree, and there's a lot of great students that come out of UCCS that have it, but maybe you think about it differently, right? Maybe you don't have that stigma immediately saying, okay, this kid's a millennial, we're putting it over here. So that's what I encourage. Thank you. I'm not looking for employment, I promise.
What are your skills? Jeremy, you mentioned that statistic that millennials are turning over jobs at what, an average of 2 years. So the role of training is really important, but is there a tension there between that quick turnaround time and a business's job to invest in training their workforce? And if there is, what do we do about it? What can businesses do to resolve that?
Good question.
It's a very good question.
It's all you.
As Michelle was saying, the cost of turnover for an employee is very expensive. And it really comes back to, personally for me, giving me meaning and giving me purpose of why I want to stay in an organization. You can do salary increases, you can give them kind of everything they want, but at the end of the day, if you hate what you're doing, none of it matters. So you gotta make sure you're engaging on a personal note with the employee and saying, what are you passionate about? What do you love doing? And really empowering them to pursue what they love to do. I think the quote is, you can fail at what you love, or you can succeed at what you hate. But at the end of the day, it's more important to fail at what you love because you're doing what you love.
And just to add on to, I think there's a healthy balance too. As employers, you can't give everything away as well, right? They need to meet you halfway at some point. And so, be a leader, an example to them as far as how you've done it, right? Because what I look to in a lot of my mentor peers is that example of somebody that I see myself in them, right? They're at where I want to be in 20 years in the future, so I look at to see, well, how did they do business, right? Who did they work for? What relationships did they make, and how can I do the same thing? But I don't think it's a full, well, okay, so you want to, have dogs at the office and only work 3 days a week and 20 hours and make 6 figures. Okay, that's a good starting point, but I would love that too. But at the end of the day, we're a business, we got to make money, and here's why. Here's why we work the 40 hours a week, right? Here's why we do the overtime. Here's why you put your skin in the game, because when you do that, we all win together, right? So I think being more inclusive and give them some of the pains too. It's not easy being a business owner. Let them know that, right? I think it's more honest and a much better relationship when they understand your perspective too. I grew up in an entrepreneurship family, and I would listen to my parents complain about their employees at the dinner table all the time, and I would ask, do they know that? Do they know that they're doing it wrong? Do they know that you don't like the way they do this thing? And it was always no. They're just, that guy is such an idiot for the way he does this, right? And they never actually helped educate him or said, hey, or the guys in the shop really don't like when you blare heavy metal music, can you please stop that? Or, just communication is really key. And I think that might be one thing we're pretty good at. Back into we like speaking our mind, we like being, brutally honest. So try to meet that with some force, and don't bend over backwards for us, right? Push back, help us, but explain the why behind it. And I think that'll help some of those conversations. And we go, oh, we understand. Yeah, we actually have to make money as a business. Oh, the bills are coming. Got it, right? Those are some of the, as ridiculous as it sounds, I've had some pretty frustrating conversations with some millennials going, where are you in this universe of this, how does that work in your mind? And they go, oh yeah, okay, I get your side, okay. So try some of those things.
So I think of it in terms of discretionary input. So you can have these employees that come and they work 9 to 5 or 8 to 5, but you better believe that they're leaving at 5, or maybe at 3:30 they start Facebooking, and and they're just counting down. They're maybe not so efficient or effective. And I think of value give and value get. And as an older millennial or ex-zennial, if you will, I do have this expectation, and I get really kind of grumpy if I don't feel like my employer or my company values me enough to want to develop me further. I don't have every skill set. I'm not a master at everything. I'm really good at something, like amazing at some things, and I'm kind of okay at a lot of others. And like, you come into a job and it's like, okay, you want me to do these things? Help me get better here. Help me do better for this business. And as they invest in me, I become more loyal, and I want to work harder, and I want to work more, and I'm investing back in them. And it's going to be a harder decision for me to like jump ship, So I think about how do you communicate and add that clarity of, hey, we see the value in you, and I'm not going to treat you like you're a dime a dozen. And one of the ways that we're going to do that is it might not be formal. It might not be that I'm sending you off to conferences. It might be, hey, let me give you a mentor within the organization that can really teach you this. Maybe you need help with grant writing, and we can send you to this workshop, or there's this YouTube video even, or like whatever that is. Like, you can get creative with resources. We all have friends that we can call favors with, and there's a lot of free resources available too. When I worked at the university, they would send me to conferences, and I loved my boss for that. I mean, I hated that I had to come back and do work, but I loved my boss because she was like, I'll let you go to this, but you have to come back and tell me how you're going to apply it. And then in the next month, we have to make a plan on how you're going to go and get this training or go to this conference, and how is this going to help us. And, I had to put it to work, and so you can do this in a way that it immediately adds value to your business and their performance in your business too.
And if I can just add on to what Michelle said, in the workforce world, we call this upskilling your existing employees. So you have an employee in a position. What are some credentials or training that you can give them to upskill them into maybe a middle-level position that you're currently needing to fill? So you get a dedicated employee that's been with your company for a while. You give them the training that they need, maybe a little bit of a pay raise. You upskill them into a new position within the organization. You already have your dedication. You already have the professionalism, the quality of worker that you have, and then you go in and backfill into your entry-level position. That's really key, and we're looking at that talent gap right now between your entry-level positions and the positions in middle-level management or middle-skill jobs. So you look at that, and upskilling your existing employees is one way to help fill that missing gap that we have right now in the skills that the community needs.
Let's talk a little more about the startup community here. One of those, yep, we know who's starting this one. One of the other accolades that we got recently was that Colorado Springs was named the best city to start a business. So let's talk about, why is Colorado Springs, compared to other tech startup towns like Boulder, just to name one within the state, what are we doing that garnered us that distinction? And Michelle, start us off.
I'm going to talk specifically, because I'm sure you all have really good feedback on small business specifically. I am going to talk a little more specifically to startup, which again are those companies that are really looking to scale very, very, very quickly, very, very, very largely. There's a lot of talk about funding specifically, and that we have a lack of funding in Colorado Springs. And I say actually there's a lack of funding in this region altogether. Our issue is not unique actually to Colorado Springs. People think because there's so much startup activity in Denver and Boulder that they have easier access, but really they don't. If anything, we have the advantage because we're not as concentrated. And so you can actually stand out here as a successful startup, where in Denver and Boulder, you're lost. And you can't be seen. And even if there are a few funders there, they can't see you as well, because there's just so much that they see in their day every day. So I always say, first of all, if you're a startup founder in the Colorado area anyway, you need to be prepared to travel if you need funding, period, no matter if you're in Denver, Boulder, or Colorado Springs. So it's actually not a unique issue. And then talk about benefits. By comparison, Colorado Springs is a lot easier to live. It's cheaper to live here. Housing costs are still lower, even though they're rising. And the community is so much stronger. I lived in Denver for 8 years and was part of that startup community for 8 years. I can tell you the difference. There is a lot of density and there's a lot of activity, but again, it's noise, and you can get lost in it, and it doesn't actually lead to something that's substantial for help. And here, if you are, bootstrapping, your dollar can go further because your rent isn't as expensive. I was about to cuss, so I had to stop myself. Thanks. I told them, I was like, I either stutter or I hesitate when I'm about to drop an F-bomb.
This looks like a sensitive audience. Watch it.
But yeah, your dollars can go further, and you have a lot of people here that want to help. For good or bad, this community is tight. It was really easy for me coming in here when I moved here 4 years ago because the circles link. If I wanted to be in this community, it was up to me to just show up, and I was part of the community. Ekta can tell you, she was like my biggest fan. She's like, you're everywhere. I'm like, it was easy here. It was easy because I didn't have parking anxiety going downtown like I did going to Denver. I'm not even kidding. I lived there 8 years, and I would literally get out of my car and make somebody else park, and I was like, I can't deal with this, and things aren't several $100s to go to. The accessibility is better. I had a meeting, not because I was anything special. I had a meeting with the mayor 3 months after I lived here. I wasn't getting a meeting with the mayor in Denver. Are you kidding? You know what I mean? You have access to people, you have access to resources, and it's not as convoluted, and so you actually have more to leverage in a city like Colorado Springs, more than you have in a city like Denver, where you can't even navigate it. So I'm all gung-ho about it. I can answer more questions if you have them.
Yeah, I think just to add to that too, one of the reasons that we kind of drive a lot of that value is the resources, right? And we're such an inclusive community. Michelle was talking to some of those points, but there's not a whole lot of competition when it comes to that startup, business, because not a lot of people are actually executing on ideas and going after it and going through with it. And one thing that I've really seen, and I don't know if you've seen a lot of this too, Michelle, is that the startups in this community don't necessarily take advantage of those resources, right? They try to do it on their own, and they're not as prepared as they need to be, right? They expect to go pitch for funding, but don't have a business plan yet. They just have a great idea, and they go, well, there's no money in this town, darn this, I'm not going to be a startup, right? There's no money here. There is so much wealth here, right? And there's opportunities to build great businesses. And even if you do shop wealth outside, doesn't mean that you need to move your business elsewhere, right? Some people may require that you move the firm, but that could be something that you put in your terms that, no, I'm staying in Colorado Springs. Here's why. I love the people that we attract. I love the lifestyle, and for this business, it fits for us, right? And they may be willing to negotiate on there too. We saw a lot of this with the Colorado Institute for Social Impact, where just because they had a good cause that they were delivering to, they didn't need any of the other stuff, right? No business plan, no pro forma statement, no how are we actually going to do this thing? It was, I'm going to save the cats, right? And we're running for this, right? I need $50,000. I'm going to save as many cats as possible. Awesome. Good for you. You are a great human being, but you're not going to get any sort of venture capital investment or any real investment into that business to do a startup, right? And so I think that using those resources is really key. And if you're a startup, I encourage you to reach out. The one thing that we have more of in this community is mentors and people willing to give us time, right? And that is so incredibly valuable. That time and expertise, you can't pay for that, right? If we were in Silicon Valley, you'd be paying people to sit on your advisory board 6-7 figures to get the advice that we have just for taking somebody to coffee. And so that was one of the things that I really fell in love with, was the people that were willing to give me face time in this community. I stalked the heck out of everybody. I knew who was the who's who's, and Facebook, LinkedIn, I'm getting pretty oddly, strangely good at that, and was able to see, who was the movers or shakers. And I reached out to them. I said, hey, I'm a new guy in town. I'd love to meet with you and learn just how you did what you did. Can we get coffee? And it was always a yes, or it was always a no, I'm busy for the next month. Can we book it 6 weeks out? Perfect, right? And then you follow up and you show up and you have that coffee and you ask those questions, right? I think those mentorships and the role of people that we have in this community can really help, because we have some kick-ass individuals in this community that have done really, really well, and they're nice and quiet and modest about it, right? But if you ask, and everybody likes bragging about their stories, right? Deep down inside at a beer or a coffee table. And so if you ask those questions, get them to dig, there's a lot of value learning from them, right? And if it's a good fit, maybe there's somebody that you want on your team, and maybe they're willing to do that if they think it's a good fit for them too. But I think we have more resources and mentors and things available for startups that aren't being taken advantage of, that we really need to do and kind of look at how we can take advantage of those.
So what I heard him say, which is actually a soapbox item of mine, so thank you for taking that so I didn't have to, is, we do have some gap sometimes in mindset of understanding that what an investable opportunity really is. And one of my things is don't forget you have to build the business. We can get all the mentoring all day long, you can say that you need all these things, but in the end, it is still your responsibility to build the businesses. Frankly, if you can't do that, then what are you doing? why are you doing this? Alex, I'm going to use Alex Belding. He's a great example. I met him. He came through a peak startup, and it was like I heard about him, and the next thing I knew, he was just doing it, and he was killing it. And then he pivoted, and it was just amazing. And it was such a great example of he knew what he had to do, and he just did it. And he knew his market. He knew how to deliver to them. He knew what he had to build, and he did it. And he wasn't waiting for somebody to come give him something or do something for him. He had to get the right team in place. He had to get the right kind of support. He had to build his book of business. Do not underestimate sales. Everybody should be doing sales. You've got to build a pipeline. You've got to have a go-to-market strategy. All those things still matter. And so even with the best resources and with the best environment, it still comes down to you as a business owner to build your business, right? With the right team, which is what we're talking about, and deliver really, really well. So that's a little bit of a digression, but I wanted to make that point. Go ahead.
And I'll make a quick point. From the cost of doing business here in Colorado Springs, when you look at Denver, your entire rental rate here, your gross rent you're paying monthly, is about the tax bill that you're paying up in Denver. So whether you're a small business owner or a startup, your dollar can go a lot further here. I pulled some facts last night when I was getting prepared for this. To own an office building here, we're about half of what it is in the national average. Our rents are a little under half of what the national average is. So the dollar can go a lot further here for employers and employees. The cost of living for rent, even though it's going up quite drastically, it's still below the national average, and especially compared to Denver. So if you get $1 million in funding, do you want half of it going to your rent, or do you want more of it going to your R&D and actually building your business?
And I'm just going to dive just a little bit deeper on this, is that startups, you need workforce. Where do you go to get the workforce? You may not have the dollars to be able to pay a person. A couple of resources that we have in our community that you may not be aware of, one is out of our military. Currently, we're transitioning over 500 people a month out of our military. They have programs within the military where they're still active duty. It's called a Skill Bridge program, where you can actually employ an internship while they're still active duty, so they're still getting paid, they're still getting all their benefits, they're not worried about income, and you can employ them and have them as an intern for your company in all different skill sets. It could be HR, it could be IT, it could be marketing, it could be sales, you name it. It's a great transferable skill set from your transitioning military into a civilian job and a civilian startup. So that is a free resource that's available. It's just connecting to the military installations. Another free resources that are available for everyone, but especially for startups where it is hard to find employees and pay for them, is work experiences. Work experiences are when a person is employed by a third-party agency. For example, Pikes Peak Workforce Center, we use one of the staffing agencies. And one of our job seekers is employed by the staffing agency. They pay all the workman's comp and unemployment insurance, and we use job coaches to help them get the skills that they need. And we serve the hard-to-serve population, those with significant barriers to employment. But if you're willing to take someone who needs the experience and can be able to add value to your organization, you can still interview them. Department of Human Services has the same type of program. Mount Carmel Center of Excellence has the same. A lot of our community partners have work experiences programs that help with the hard-to-serve population. So if that's an avenue that you're looking at to find employees for your startup, it's a great resource. There are a lot of them in our community. It's really becoming aware of them and using them.
Are there any other ways that you would suggest that businesses who are not in that startup space can take advantage of the startup culture and the startup resources here?
Well, I think startup methodology is valuable in any business because it's all about being lean, and it's all about, making sure that you get that customer validation for your solution versus Colin was talking about, and I was thinking in my head, it's like there's a lot of people like, well, if I build it, they'll come, right? If you build it, they'll come. It's a great product. It's this great service. Of course they want this. And it's like, but do they? Did you ask them? Maybe they don't actually want that. Just because you build it doesn't mean anybody's coming. And so, I think there's something really just in general with startup about making sure that you're building something that has a market, that there's a market need for, that people want to pay for, and making sure that you're building it just to say lean, it's like as basic as possible, because you're making assumptions all the time on what you think your customers or this market wants. And instead of building 7 different features, maybe you build one and you test it, and then your customers will actually tell you what the next feature should be, versus you just making this assumption without getting any of that validation from your customer. So I think that's valuable no matter what type of business, no matter what stage. You can be a corporate business, and I think if you're building a new product model, or you thinking about doing something unique or different or new, like, I think those methodologies just apply across the board.
Jeremy, I want to return to something you brought up, which is the costs of doing business, and particularly in a state and a region that's growing so quickly, property costs are going up and will continue to go up. So can you talk to us a little about some of those trends, what businesses can do in that sort of environment when they're growing out of spaces, looking for new ones?
Yeah. So cost of ownership is going up, but according to the national average, it's not quite going up as rapidly as we're seeing across the nation. Colorado Springs, I had a figure here, our rents grew on an average of 1.5% annually since the Great Recession. Nationally, it's 4.5%. So as we're seeing vacancy rates going down, I mean, our record high vacancy rate in 2009 was about 16, almost 17%. We're now down to 11. With that squeeze of supply and demand, you're going to, of course, see the rates on it go a little bit higher. But still, with that, we're far below the national average. On the sales side, last year was one of the best records we've had in this entire cycle. But what I'm seeing a lot, and a lot of the clients that I'm working with, and it's kind of my theory, is the cost of ownership compared to leasing is about half of that. I did the math, and money's cheap right now. It's going up, and we're going to see a little bit of a squeeze, and of how much money you can get. But with it, compared to the average rental rate here in Colorado Springs and what you can buy a building for, it's about half of it over the expectancy of the lease. So I think trends are going well. We're going to have to keep a good eye on what the feds are doing with money to make sure that we can actually afford it. And then also understanding that the cycle can change at any given moment. I think Tatiana Bailey said we're about 12 to 18 months from the turn in the cycle. So businesses really need to be aware, hey, I may be buying a building now that I can afford now and business is doing great. Where am I in 18 months? Can I actually afford the rent that I'm paying, or can I afford the loan that I'm servicing my debt with? So it's something that we really need to keep an eye on, of understanding what's in the future, not necessarily making our decision based off the past.
All right, I've been having fun asking all of you the questions, but I want to leave some time for the audience to ask some questions as well. So before we do that, can you each give us one takeaway that you want the audience to leave with today?
So I wrote this down because I think it's a valuable point that my parents have always taught me. But I said hindsight's 20/20. Everyone can always say I could have made a better decision yesterday if I just would have known what was going to happen. But also I think that hindsight can be short, and you can lose the depth of the hindsight pretty quickly. We need to remember what cycles happen, how bad it can get. It may not get there, but we need to be prepared for it and make our decisions not based off of where we think we'll be in 5 years, but what could happen in 5 years.
I would say for businesses and the hire needs, the workforce need, rethink and reevaluate how you're hiring. Look at more skills-based, competency-based hiring. Look at your job descriptions. Utilize the resources that we have in our community that are at no cost to you to be able to help fill that workforce center gap. Look internally when you look at hiring needs. Is there someone that you can upskill within your existing work pool that you can get the jobs that you need to fill? So really rethink your hiring needs and your workforce needs, and then ask for help.
Yeah, and I think kind of the theme is being just more proactive instead of reactive, right? Getting ahead of that ball and thinking, this millennial fad isn't going anywhere, and I'm going to have to deal with it. So how am I going to do that, right? And how am I going to work with these people? And how is it going to change my business culture? And is it something that I want to change, or am I going to hire only old ladies, right? What's going to be this shift for me? And then two, hey, I love you old ladies out there. I'll
Old ladies in the audience.
not in this room. No, watching the video.
Nice save.
Watching the video. I'm just digging this hole deeper.
Stop digging. Stop digging.
Let's move forward.
Rewind.
The other thing I'd like to leave you guys with, especially the younger audience, everybody in this room, to reach out and speak up and get engaged, right? I mean, reach out to that mentor or peer that you want to get in touch with, especially the younger generation. Speak up, right? Show up, go to events, tap that guy on the shoulder and say, hi, I'm Colin. I don't know what I'm going to say next, but I just want to make sure I'm Colin, and I'm going to follow you up for something in the future, right? And then you show up that next time, you do the same awkward handshake, and eventually you end up getting coffee, and you're like, wow, we're best of friends now. Holy cow, you're the CEO of a great company here in town. Here's what I want to do. How can we help, right? But there's so much mentorship and relationships to be built in this city. I think that's one thing Colorado Springs is really good at, is they're good at reaching that hand out and, helping you up. And so I encourage that. I encourage you to reach out to your peers. And then as business owners, right, as somebody does reaches out, grab that coffee with them, right? It's not going to cost you an arm and a leg. And you might find a new employee out of them, right? You might find somebody that, as you're talking, you find that they're more engaged with what you're trying to do, and now you have a partnership that formed where you didn't even know it would start, right? I found more opportunities in the 2 years that I've been in the workforce than I did the whole 4 years when I was at college, and it's just from being around people, right? I mean, I've had 6 different ideas of, well, if I didn't do finance, I could be doing this, I could be doing real estate, I could be doing startups, I could be doing this, and it's all just from experience and who you meet. And so get as much experience as possible and reach out and communicate, and I think, you'll be just fine for both sides, employers and people looking for an employment, right? If we communicate, we're all in this thing together, and we really are. And I wake up every day with kind of the same focus. If I focus on the city of Colorado Springs and making the community around me great, I'll be successful no matter what I'm doing. So I encourage you guys to do the same.
I have like 17 things I want to say.
Moderator says no, one.
I was really like, golly, I can't pick one. So first is stop thinking that you can do it alone and reach out, whether that's an advisor, whether that's a co-founder, whether that's your wife or your spouse or whatever. It's much better. No one person has all the skills. So you're going to be better if you can bring a team with you to actually build your business. The other thing is focus. I work with a lot of really starry-eyed entrepreneurs, and sometimes it's like, I just need you to stop, can you just go this direction, you want to always be agile and responsive to your market, but you also need to know when you're making those decisions and focus on one thing, really drive there. And the last thing is, remember that people are people. And sometimes that can be really hard. I'm like the queen of angry all the time. It's like my default emotion. And so it's one of those things of like, well, wait a second, let me break this down. Let me look at this person as a person for a second so that I can have the compassion or patience or whatever it is, or if it's an employee to be like, they're just young and I have to train them, or just remember that people are people and that you only see one side, one part of them, whether they're an employee or a business partner or a customer or somebody that, I have to work with the Chamber EDC, even working with them, and sometimes they don't move as fast as I want them to. My partners don't move as fast. I didn't mean to specifically call out the Chamber, but Aikton and I have been talking for years about doing something together, and we just haven't yet, and that's on both of us. I don't know what's going on there, but, so just, remember people are people.
Thank you. All right, questions from all of you. And since we are recording, I'll bring the microphone out to you. But what questions do you have for our panelists?
Not that I need it, but as a triple millennial.
I love it.
What about independent contractors? Is that a big part of everything still? Coming, what?
You look at independent contractors and you look at the gig economy. How many people have heard of the gig economy? The gig economy is where you have more, by 2020, they say 40% of our workforce is going to be a 1099 employee, a part-time employee, or freelance. And you look at that, and that is the wave of the future. And it helps with millennials that maybe, they're moving all the time, or they don't know what they want to do, or they want to do multiple things. Someone who is a 1099 employee, in the gig economy, it's where they're going to be successful. And I think I've been doing some research lately on the gig economy, and it's really where we're going. And we don't have a choice. Workforce is changing. You have automation and driverless vehicles. So things are changing. Jobs we have today are not going to be around tomorrow. And what kind of jobs are those going to be? How are we going to fill those? What's the skill sets that we need? Those are questions that we need to ask ourselves. And as business owners, that's what you need to ask yourself. Is this really a position that I need now? It's going to grow in the future, or is this position going to really be eliminated in the next 3 to 4 years? And you really need, a part of your business plan. You have to think about that. Elevator operators, they're no longer in existence, but they have skill sets that they use for other jobs. So really look at the gig economy and 1099 employees.
I think, too, it's an easy out for us millennials, right? Because we don't lose our freedom when we're an independent contractor. We still work for us, right? So I think maybe a way to combat some of that is by giving them inclusive ownership or giving them some sort of incentive to drive and build that business, right? The reason that I work as an independent financial advisor with SFP, because I didn't want to go in the corporate world because it wasn't a good fit for me, right? Could I have been successful in that world? Do I wish there's days I was working on a team and not by myself? Absolutely. But that didn't outweigh the pros of being independent and having the freedom to build the business the way I want to, right? And not screwing people over and being honest and doing it right. And so that was my focus, and I didn't find that where I was at, right? I even thought, I was like, okay, well, I'll go work there for 2 years and I'll get my licensing and then I'll quit to go do my own thing anyhow, right? Get all the experiences I can. But I think that independent contractors, it's an easy way to not lose our freedom. But if you look at it as, okay, you're not an independent contractor, you're an employee, but we're gonna structure this incentives to make you feel like you have ownership and feel like you're getting up and you're really driving the income that you earn. I think we just want to have some skin in the game is really what it comes down to. I would rather grind and work 80 hours a week for a $25,000 a year check than go, sit at a desk job 9 to 5 for, 6 figures, right? And may I be sick? Yeah, but there's a lot of value into that ownersome, and I think there's power that comes behind that, and that's what we want, right? And so as an employer, I think trying to cultivate it, go ask them, do you want to be an independent contractor? Why do you want to be an independent contractor? Is it because it's the job title, or is it because what comes within that title, the freedom and those pieces that come with it, right? So I think kind of opening that up, you might find that maybe not everybody needs to be that independent contractor, and it was just a sense of losing that freedom and ownership that they didn't want to give up.
I think that outlines some of the benefits. What about the challenges from a workforce perspective? Our traditional model has been to provide health benefits and retirement benefits through traditional employment. What kind of changes are we going to see?
Well, I think you're going to see it more with the financial services industry. You have more demand.
And nobody's buying benefits from me right now.
Go see him. He's got great opportunities. But anyway, you really look, the healthcare industry. You look at the healthcare, you look at Obamacare, you look at what the administration is doing now with our healthcare plans, and that's all going to change, and it's going to change based on the workers that you have, and what's important to your workforce, to your employees that you have. Is it a pension that they need? Very few companies have pensions. They go now to, your Roth IRAs, your retirement plans, investments. So it's going to change, but we don't have a choice. And I think it's really refocusing.
Other questions?
We see with the millennial generation and a lot of what's coming down the pipeline is that we're losing our trades. A lot of tech, a lot of that type of stuff, but as far as actual building of homes, building of construction and that type of stuff. They're not getting that training in schools much anymore, and we're losing that. Where do you see that coming? Because that workforce is hard to find.
And actually, it's coming back. It is, your trades are coming back, as we talked about earlier, that not everyone needs a 4-year degree. What are the skill sets you need? We know everyone graduating high school is not going to go to college. They're not even set for community college. But you look at the trades, there's career and construction programs. Career and construction programs are out of 3 of our school districts right now. D49 just built a facility over off Powers where they're actually taking students in the high school and they're building homes. They're learning the trades again. Trades is very huge. The military has a program with the Home Building Institute, I believe, where they're actually training those veterans that are leaving the military on the trades. So trades are coming back. You don't see it, you don't hear about it, because there is a high demand occupation is in construction. And the reason is, for a while, the school K-12 education system didn't focus on that. They focused on the 4-year degree and other other testing scores that they may have needed, but we're bringing that back. There's career and technical education in every school system in our district. And the great thing is the districts are coming together. The career and technical education programs now meet on a quarterly basis where they're helping combine resources. They can speak with one voice to a business rather than D11, D49, D2 all going to the same company. They're now talking with one voice. You're going to start seeing the change. It's going to take time to build that skill set, but it's extremely important.
I think it's too how society talks about the opportunities to the kids going through school. I mean, for me growing up, it wasn't sexy to go do construction. That wasn't the American dream. It wasn't a good income. Some of my best clients are construction workers making 6 figures a year with no college education, right out of high school, and they're hard workers, right? And they get compensated for that, especially when there's a lack of demand. And so I think societally we are shifting that language as we talk to kids about how, what is that path for you, right? And it's shifting from, okay, you don't have to go to school. And if you're not going to school, here's your options, right? And here's the programs we have offered through a school, or if we don't offer them, here's our neighbors or sister schools that do it. It might be a better fit if you go over there, right? So I think we're shifting in our language a little bit too to go, you can have a great career in construction, right? And kind of opening up that dialogue to more about, well, what do you want to do and why do you want to do that? And so I think that's going to be a big driver in try to filling that gap. But, we as a society, it's okay to go work in construction. It's okay to go be a garbage man and make a good, honest living. Like, we need to kind of remove those negative stigmas out of our vocabulary and really encourage people to pursue what they're passionate about and what they want to work in. And yeah, if they're doing great, good for them. Awesome job, right?
I mean, I tell people, like, startup is kind of like the extreme sport of starting a business, and I'm like, I will never do it. And I'm like, why do you want, like, do you want it? Like, this is really hard, actually. Like, wouldn't you rather do it this way? So, like, it's even just kind of destigmatizing things, and it's funny to always talk about sexy. Like, it just seems really cool to be tech. But I can't remember which speaker it was, but it's one of the popular ones. And he said something about, because he was talking about coal mines and how they're closing more and there's fewer, coal miners, and he was kind of blunt and was like, it's up to every individual to make sure that they have skills that are relevant today. You cannot stop learning as an individual. And when you're talking about construction workers, I'm like, oh, well, now they're 3D printing houses, with concrete and stuff like that. So maybe they need to start learning technology too, because maybe that's where the industry is going as well. So it's always this kind of battle of what's what we know and what's coming and how do I fit both. Right? Because as an employee or as a trade person or as a person that wants to work, it's up to me to make sure that I have value and that I can contribute, not just today, but in the future also. And maybe that's something as an employer that you can help train them to be also.
And I think, too, I just want to tie back into what Jeremy said about kind of having a 5-year plan. I mean, you really should be looking at 5 years in the future and going, how am I going to survive and what am I going to do if these things happen, right? And having a plan of when that happens, right? If employment's changing, I have a plan on how I'm going to, combat employment. I'm going to start training, my $10 an hour guy to become the next leader so he can then, be the leader for the next guy I hire, right? Thinking about some of these things that are moving parts and pieces, or I'm really going to give this guy a really good incentives package because he's a great leader and I want him to stay around because he's going to really drive this organization and he doesn't even know it yet, right? There's some of these things that we can look ahead and go, okay, I got a plan for that. I'm always thinking 3 to 5 years out for myself. I mean, that is it's one of my best traits. It's also one of my biggest weaknesses is that I'm impatient, right? I want it all tomorrow. And I know a lot of us think that same way, but kind of where I become my best is when I put steps into a plan and I execute on those steps. And all of a sudden I've done 9 through 10 and all of a sudden I'm on step 11 and that's, building the business and running and opening the doors, right? So building a plan, whether you're doing a startup or whether you're hiring a new individual, planning for that process is really crucial in that piece.
Jeremy, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I was just going to say, going off the home construction, El Paso County's at a record low of inventory. I mean, we really should be at a 2-year inventory of houses in there. We're now at, I think, several months of inventory. And the biggest reason, it's not home builders saying we don't want to build them, people won't pay for them. It's the fact that they don't have enough labor to actually build the supply. So it's crucial that our society really changes its prerogative of saying, we need contractors, you're very, very viable to our economy. And support that decision, especially at a young age, of saying, like you said, it may not seem sexy, but it's crucial, and you actually get paid very well for it these days.
And I'll just add on to that, apprenticeships. How many people have heard of apprenticeships? Apprenticeships are earn as you learn model. The state of Colorado received millions of dollars from the federal government Department of Labor to help with apprenticeship programs. And apprenticeship programs, you can start in high school. You can start a job in high school, earn stackable, credible credentials, and really make, a 4-year journeyman in an electrical union makes $40 an hour. And your apprenticeship programs are a great way to be able to help and grow your workforce that you need. We've always think of apprenticeships in the trades, right? The plumbing, the pipe fitting, and the electrical union. There's apprenticeships in cybersecurity. There's apprenticeships in insurance. There's apprenticeships in medical assistance. So apprenticeships run across all different industries. And it's a way, if we change that mindset, earn as you learn, eventually maybe you do go get a 4-year degree, but you don't go right out of high school into a 4-year degree. You earn as you learn mentality. And it's really changed the way, like everyone said, about how we think things.
And that might help too with some of the turnover, problems, right? If we give, maybe as an employer, if we set up apprenticeships for the first 3 months of a client comes on board, right? We kind of see if they're the right fit. Because we don't know what we don't know, so we may think this is the best organization in the world to work for, and then Susie, our boss, is a real son of a gun to work with, and I can't stand getting to work every day, right? And so there's things that will happen over that first 3 months of development. And I think too, as an owner, you have to push us, right? It's easy to quit, and regardless of the age, whether you're millennial or X or whatever, it's easy to give up and quit. And I think you see it a lot in the startup world as they go, oh, this is super sexy. I'm going to do a startup. I'm going to make billions of dollars. I watch Shark Tank every night. This is my jam. They get 3 weeks in and they go, this sucks, right? This is hard. I can't do this anymore. I got 600 people calling me. I don't have any money. What are we doing here? I want that day job, 9 to 5 desk job. There's times in my beginning of my career I was like, God, I would pay to have a day job, right? Just give me some stable income where I'm not bouncing bills to bills check, month to month. And so, but then it was that my passion for building this thing on my own was more than that, right? But I battled back and forth, and there was days I wanted to quit. But my mentors got back to me and said, Colin, you're doing all the right things now. It's a 3 to 5 year game that you're in, right? You're only in year 1.5. They're like, buckle down. You're going to have a long road at this. And I kind of refocused and recentered and go, yeah, I chose to do this, and I'm not giving up for the next 3 to 5 years. After that point, we'll reevaluate. If my business is at a point where I want it to be, I'm going to pivot, right? I might be looking at construction, So I think it ties that back to that planning of, have a plan. And as that plan comes derailed, reevaluate. Go, do I need to pivot, or is my plan on track? What do I need to do? But if you're kind of just winging it by the hip every day, it's not going to work. It's not a long run, That might be why you're having some problems. But it's not going to work long term, right? It will short term and you'll get by, but for a long term, building a business and really being successful and building something in Colorado Springs, it's a short term, Band-Aid on a long term problem.
And there is no such thing as a silver bullet.
Yep.
Other questions? Yes.
So do you notice that in the millennial market, do you have issues with work ethic? And if you do, how do you overcome that?
Good question.
I have had different interns and stuff like that with Peak Startup, and I have not had that problem. If anything, they have so much more energy than I do, and they're like, oh, let's do this, let's do this. I'm like, I can't keep up with you, and that's great. And I have to tell them, I'm only paying you for 20 hours, and they're like, but I'm gonna work more. And I'm like, no, don't work more than I can pay you. Like, don't do that, but they're so eager. But then I've also worked in the food service industry. One of my clients is the food service industry, but I actually blame them for not training or giving to their employees to make them feel valuable, so we're changing that a little bit. But I don't think it's a generational thing. I don't even want to say it's millennials. If you treat me poorly, I'm probably not, I'm going to act the way you treat me, right? If you treat me like a child, I'll probably be a little childish. If you treat me like you respect me, then I'll act with respect, and things like that. So I kind of think that comes down to the employer a lot too. I haven't seen it just be like millennials are just lazy. I've not seen that at all. Maybe because I am one, so I'm a little biased. But.
Yeah, probably not the best person to answer this either. I'm a little biased, but the work ethic is honestly my biggest problem with this generation, right? And I think that's one of the reasons I stand out, is just because I'm passionate what I do and I want to work for it. But that was distilled by my parents, right? It was how I was brought up. I was never given money for doing chores. Chores were the reason I got to live in the house and have a roof over my head, right? And that was very clear to me growing up. And if I wanted to work, I could go work for the business, earn $10 an hour, and that was my date money, right? But I think this kind of ties back to why I think the owners don't need to bend over backwards all the time, right? You need to have your hard rules in the sand. You need to stick to them and stick to your guns, right? Because the minute that we start going, well, yeah, it's okay that you're late, they'll feed on that, right? Yeah, I want to show up at work at 11 o'clock every day in my pajamas and not do anything, right? That's the lifestyle. If it's okay with my boss, I'm going to keep doing it, right? I'm going to push the limits. We're really good at doing that and kind of pushing those boundaries. And so I think, too, if you're seeing a lot of that behavior in your employee, they're not engaged for some reason, right? There's a disconnection, whether it's not they're passionate about what you're doing, they don't like the active duties that they may have on a day-to-day. Maybe sitting down with them and going, okay, I see you're kind of, you're falling a little bit here. Why is this happening? We need you to work 40 hours a week. We can't have you being late. This is our policy. This is who we are as a brand, and you're hurting that image. So this is why I need you to do these things, right? And but don't give up on that battle. I think that's something that we really have to put our foot down and really maybe showing them, right? Maybe communicating with them what a good work ethic is. They may just not know, right? But kind of setting those examples, and it's going to be a multitude of those things based on that individual, right? And it might just be an inherently lazy millennial. There's those out there that not the right fit. Okay, then that's an employee that's not going to work at my business, right? And there's plenty out there.
I don't like the generational. I don't like this whole generational thing. Honestly, there are lazy people across the board. Period.
There is.
Let's be serious.
It's true. And to kind of follow up what Colin said is you really got to look at the background of the people that you work with and you're hiring. What's their background? Where do they come from? Do they come from someone whose parents own their own business and they were given all these opportunities in the world? Or are they coming from a single parent, the younger of 10 siblings, and they didn't have anyone to teach them and mentor them and give them the skill sets that they need? So some people just don't know because they really don't know. And you've also got to look historically when unemployment was at its high, the young generation, the millennials, could not get jobs because the older generation were taking the fast food jobs or taking your entry-level employment. So they don't necessarily have the work history and be able to be taught what we call soft skills to get that job. So it may not be laziness, they may not know it and no one's ever told them.
And to go off that from a personal example, if you're having issues with a millennial not being motivated, maybe you need to sometimes look at yourself as a boss or a business owner. And leading by example versus being the boss saying and threatening that I'm going to punish you or discipline you or fire you. The best example is I worked at Catalyst Campus for a few years, and our CEO, someone who should be in the high-level meetings, presenting, everything like that, when we had an issue of not enough chairs, he was the first to jump up and put chairs on the ground. And that immediately clicked in my head, said, if he's doing that, I need to do that. So really try to focus on leading by example, because I think millennials really kind of look up to their mentors, look up to their peers and saying, if they're doing that, that's something I should be doing.
I'd just like to make a quick point. You talked about millennials in 2 years, but Xers are moving at 3 and boomers are at 3.5. So we're just in a very, very mobile talent market anyway. My question for the panel, however, this has all been about talent acquisition. A lot of us in this room need sales, right? And so how do small businesses sell to the now largest wallet in the economy, the millennial generation, without losing the other wallets like X and boomers? How do you communicate to this multi-generational world where we really are siloing how each generation interacts with information? I'd just be curious to know.
I don't, personally, y'all might have a different opinion on this. I think it completely depends. Which demographic of the millennial generation are you trying to attract, right? And for what? What are you selling? And I don't, because not everybody gets their information the same way. I was talking, this is a great example. I just think it's hilarious. So I was coaching someone and they were doing something where their market were car dealers. And I was like, well, how are you going to get these car dealers on board? And he's like, I'm going to use LinkedIn. And I remember, and I was like, LinkedIn? Why? And he's like, well, it's just, it's easy. I have access. I'm like, is that where car dealers get their information? Is that how they get their influence? Is that where their influence? Is that, why? And so I would challenge to say, you really need to know your market. And I don't know your market, so I can't just tell you, and it's everybody, I would say, would need to go to market differently in some way, whether it's maybe the method or the channel is the same, but your messaging is different, and how you position yourself is different, and how you talk about your value proposition might be a certain way, and you might have to do multiple, right? If you're serving multiple groups of people that make decisions in different ways, even if it's for the same product or the same service, you might need to have multiple messages, and you have to be careful not to dilute or conflict with one another, and that's a skilled game, honestly, you know. And like sometimes it's you leveraging social media. Sometimes that's the worst way to do it. Sometimes you need to be a brick and mortar, and you need to have a shop that's in the right place, you know. So I really think it truly depends on the market, and how they want to receive that information, and how they make those kinds of decisions. And so to me, it takes a lot of research and a lot of discovery, and a lot of asking questions, and then doing what they tell you they want. You know, like when I used to do sales training, it was about shut up, like stop talking. If you stop talking and you're in front of your customer, they'll actually tell you what they want. They'll tell you how they want it. They'll tell you the words that they want to hear from your mouth. Stop talking and just ask them questions and let them answer. You know, so I'd say stop talking and ask more questions.
I think at face value, we want to matter more than we ever have in the past, right? We want you as the person selling me something to make me feel like I matter, right? Whether that's just a small touch but I don't want to just be another customer. And I think that's something, and it's the small touches. Like, I mean, with Alex, for an example, I'm not a client of his, but he has a free directory, and I sent him my business website, and he sent me an email back. He's like, "You rock, dude. It's up on the website. You know, thank you so much for passing this along. You know, you're the best." Even just that quick little email and touch, I mean, made my day. And I love any website, anything goes right to Alex, because I love what he does, and I love the way he builds his business, right? And it was just a simple email and a simple touch saying that I was awesome for doing something that helped him out. And I felt that, you know, and it was real. You know, I could really tell that he really cared that I was giving him my website and he could actually post it and brand, because it helped him build his business, right? And those engagements, like with Jeremy, I haven't given Jeremy any business yet. I love talking commercial real estate. I love riding dirt bikes, and we go out, and I know there's a time that we're going to pass business, but I love working with him, right? I love engaging with him because he makes me feel like I matter, and I'm not just a client, right? I'm not just a customer, and it's more engaging relationships. So I think looking for ways to engage with those customers, kind of that extra touch is good. And I think the other thing too to really stick out is the whole social enterprise wave and shift, and some people say it's a fad, but it's going to be around here for a while. That's not for everybody, and that's okay. It's okay to be a for-profit business still. It's okay to be a nonprofit business, and it's even better if you're a social enterprise, because I'm a little biased. But, you know, using Steve Kazmarek with Borealis Fat Bikes as an example, we sat with him. He's like, "Man, I'm a for-profit company. I love this mission. I want to do it. I don't know where to start, and I don't know how," right? So we kind of sat down. We were talking through. We were like, maybe you just try doing a bike, right? Maybe you do a veteran's bike that you bring the cost down, you sell it for cost, and you say, you know, we're doing one edition. This is only for veterans, and any money we make is going back to supporting those individuals. And he looked at that, and he was going, okay, I could do that. It's going to take this amount of work hours. It's going to be this amount of a headache to do a whole new just a bike. Maybe this isn't the right fit for me, right? Maybe I'm just going to do great things as a for-profit business, support all these awesome causes that we have in the community by writing donations. That model isn't bad. And so I think, too, as an organization, you need to step back and look and go, well, where is my time best spent? Am I really a social enterprise? Am I really believing this mission, or am I trying to use this as a marketing play to drive some more short-term dollars, right? You know, you'll exhaust that fuse. And so I think looking at it from, you know, how can we really serve our audience and our community, and is it through just being an excellent for-profit company and then maybe donating to a charity that our customers believe in, or is it incorporating this whole new model, right? What's going to work best, but then putting that strategic plan in place to get there.
You want to add anything, Jeremy?
This is a challenge I dealt with. I came into a firm where most of the brokers are above the age of 60. And I came in, I said, we need to get SEO. We need to get SEO, we need to get on Google rankings, and we need to hit everyone on social media. And then my firm owner said, yeah, the ones that are on social media and the ones that are Googling us probably aren't the ones that have money. And it's not entirely true, but in the sense of the best thing I learned is you got to meet your customer where they're at. And, you know, The older generation, it's a handshake. You're as good as your handshake, and it's meeting in person. And then I'm seeing a lot of my clients, I have to communicate with them on the phone. Younger clients really like the idea of being behind email. They can email me back at 4 o'clock in the morning, whenever it's the most convenient for them. And then there are some where I'm talking with them on social media, giving them referrals. So I wish there was an end-all be-all of saying if we make this great website, it'll be everything, but it's got to be a good mix of where every customer is.
That's one thing too. I mean, just to talk onto that, texting. I never thought, going to school, it was like you never text a business client. That's not, business professional. That's a no-no. If you email or phone call is the only way you communicate. The number of deals that I've closed via text, the number of people that I communicate back and forth, just quick text, it's incredible, right? And I think it's not just a millennial thing. You have older demographics doing it all day. People sitting on their phones all the time, and it's just ease of use. And so kind of culturing to that, maybe you have a line that it's a text or a chat box, or, it can follow up with them. And I think the following up is really crucial for us too. It's kind of that additional touch I was talking about. Go out of the way and make that extra little bump and say, hey, just checking in on you. I love doing that with the people that I work with and going, I haven't heard from you in a month. Are you still breathing? Are we? What's happening over here, right? Are you okay? How are things going? I'm just curious. It takes an email, right? You get an email response, awesome, they're still doing good. Or hey, I could be servicing them a little bit better. It looks like they have some issues. How can I help, right? And then just even asking how you can help, right? Being that support and going, I know a guy here in the town. We have so much of that in this community of people that have great referral sources, of trusted partners that have done really well. Maybe just reach out, hey, who do you use for this, right? I'm looking for this. Maybe you have a couple people, so many great resources in the community to look to and say, where are the professionals at? Or what's worked for you? How did you reach? I see you're doing a great job at reaching your millennial audience. What's your way that you're communicating with them? What are you doing to get that, right? Use those resources in the community. Again, I think that's kind of a common theme today, but we have so much that is out there that can really help you as a business owner.
There's also a difference between reaching them and getting them to convert to buyers or customers or whatever. So just because you reach them, like mass doesn't always work, because in the end you need somebody to give you money. So keep that in mind too. That reach is not always Peak Startup had that problem where we just threw this huge net out because we just wanted anybody to come for so long, and now we're having to back into that, be like, I have to tell a lot of people every day that I can't actually help them because they're not a startup. And it's because we threw our net too wide and we weren't specific with our messaging and all these things. And so now, luckily I have a really great relationship with the SBDC, and typically, I'd say 80% of the people that come to me wanting help, I go, I'm not the right person for you, but I have friends here and they will take great care of you, go here, right? And Ekta does that to me too, because she'll get people that elevate up or they want to go the startup model and she'll send them to me, but that was a problem that we had. And so now I spend 80% of my email time redirecting, right? So I don't know that was the best thing that we did, because we weren't specific about our messaging or targeted, and that's something that I really challenge our Marcom committee on, is we are open and anybody can come, but let's make sure that what we're targeting is our target. And if there's residual or if there's excess, because again, I think a lot of these methodologies could be applied anywhere, but when it comes to who I'm going to help and where I actually put our resources, we have a mission that we have to fulfill that's really specific. I have donors, I have grants, I have certain kind of criteria that I have to meet as a nonprofit. So I have to make sure that I'm doing what I say we're doing, that we're supposed to be doing, which is serving startups. So just think of it in that way too, is sometimes wide isn't always. Sometimes it's exactly what you need, right? If that's, you're just trying to go viral or something, or, but sometimes wide is not always better.
All right, I think we have time for one more question.
So we have a lot of people moving into Colorado Springs, and I know I've thought a lot about the positive consequences of that, but what are some of the negative and maybe some of the natural consequences that we really should be thinking about with all the people moving in?
Transportation, infrastructure.
Cheyenne Canyon, open space.
Say that again, Jeremy.
I said Cheyenne Canyon open space. I want the trail to myself, not with 500 other people.
there's so many, right? You have transportation, you have infrastructures, the roads, the school systems, the housing market. There's a lot of impact. And I guess where are we growing, how are we growing? The great thing is we're great, workforce related. We're getting a great talent pool moving in, and it's great for the businesses in the community, and it's great for the services and products, buying the products that you sell. So it's a balance.
And I think, too, it's coming whether or not you want it to or not. So I think adapting to the fact of, well, stop having people moving here, no, and going, well, how can I take advantage of that, right? How can I, the ideas that City Council is bringing and they're working on, how can I, instead of speaking up against it, how can I get involved and speak for it, right? How can I put my name on a project? How can I get involved with growing the city together? Because we're going to be increasing in numbers, and I love how our biggest negative Nancy's is ourselves, right? We are our own worst enemy in Colorado Springs. It's obviously a great place to be because there's a lot of freaking people coming here for it. And so one of the coolest things, too, is at the economic breakfast that military wasn't the #1 service provider in our community anymore. That's a big change. Just for the city and the future of Colorado Springs from an economic standpoint, where we're not at the helm. In the past, if one of those military bases pulled out, we would have been in some serious danger, right? So I think we need to kind of diversify what our services and talent pools are, and I think we're doing just that. And so we're encouraging that, encouraging that we can be the National Cybersecurity Center, and we own that as our identity. We don't need to be a Boulder. We don't need to be a Denver. There's nothing wrong with being our own identity as Colorado Springs and shaping that as being the cyber or DoD experts and being very high in tech and the Silicon Mountain. I love those ideas. Instead of shooting them down at face value, why don't we explore them a little bit further, right, and encourage this growth? And how can we leverage that as a city to be the city of champions, right? It's pretty incredible that we're the only city in the nation that can call ourselves Olympic City USA, right? And how much of a challenge that was just to get approved and be able, that's something that we can brand. It's crazy in my mind, right? So how can we leverage some of these things and the uniqueness that we bring to the table to shine as Colorado Springs as a community?
I think there's an honest cost, like with the housing inventory just becoming less and less, housing prices are becoming higher, building prices, like we're still low by the national averages. Our rate of increase is still lower, but it is going to go up, right? The cost of employees is more, like again, my food service client that I work with, I'm like, you realize that we are trying to get line cooks in for this really nice restaurant at the same rate that McDonald's pays now, and they have benefits, and so like really understanding the competitive market for employees is huge, and the fact that we do have such a low unemployment rate, it's like terrible for employees. Like it's harder for employees or employers, So, even understanding that things are going to cost more, and employees cost more. And so just being aware, I think, of that and making sure that you're elevating as best as you can, and sometimes that means that your rates have to go up, and sometimes that means, bacon doesn't cost what it cost 10 years ago, so those food service people or whomever caterers that are using bacon have to charge more for those bacon items, and that it's just how it is. It's what happens when we have strong a strong economy, and I think don't be scared of that, as Colin was saying, like be ready and don't, there's something about being proactive with increasing your rates, like you can't price yourself out of the market, but you have to be ready. Nothing is ever going to just stay the same. And you as a business owner have to always recognize that there's going to be a constant evolution to your business, whether it's on the internal, with your employees and how you're dealing with them and how you're training them or developing them, and the external and how consumers make decisions and what kind of decisions they make and how their pocketbooks look too. So just you constantly need to make sure that you're evolving to be relevant,
Okay, I said one question, but there was one more back there. I think we have time. You holler, I'll repeat it. How about that?
So my question is, and it's probably not going to be a popular question, but I think the issue with millennials and where we've gone is more of a societal issue. And the societal issue that is favoring the employee as opposed to the employer. And when I say that, I mean that just because somebody gets fired doesn't mean it's discrimination. And I think we've gone to the point where if you get fired from a job, it's poor me, and I think that's come a lot from the millennial generation. Discrimination is real, it exists, it's out there. But just because you got fired because you didn't do your job doesn't mean it's discrimination. And on the flip side of that, when we talk about talent acquisition, there's a real issue with references and reference checks. I've done over 300 reference checks in the last 2 years. There's a lot of organizations out there that their HR policies will only allow them to state the start and end date of an employee. They won't tell you why they left, how they left. I had an employee leave me a week ago with an hour and 10-minute notice for their Swiss check. And there's a societal issue that if you on the phone talk anything bad about a former employee, you open yourself up to a lawsuit. And I think that's the biggest issue, is that you don't know who you're hiring anymore because, God forbid, you say anything about somebody and you open yourself up for a lawsuit. So how do you deal with that issue?
So the first thing that comes to mind for me is balance. It's a balance. And so when I work with employers, I actually am saying, do these things, which are to develop your team so that you have ammunition and you have a paper trail. And if it does come down to this person is not performing well, you have everything you need to rightfully terminate. We are in an at-will state. So you have to deal with that. You have to deal that as an employee, they can quit at any time. And as an employer, you can fire at any time. That's the way it is, right? I think there's a lot on the side of hiring of like, who are you hiring and how do you make sure that they're the right fit? And then what are you doing to clarify those expectations? And again, like all these little soft things that seem like they're, all about the employee, I beg to differ, they're all about the employer. Because I want to know if I put together progressive discipline plans that say, okay, we start to see that you're starting to be late, I'm going to document this, I'm going to give you the chance to correct it, because now I have what I need as fuel to rightfully terminate you without having an unemployment fiasco afterwards, right? So I say it's a balance, and it is the employer. I mean, you are the one fighting for the right talent. So it is up to you to do the things right and to set it up to where you're getting the right people, you're treating them the right way, and you're doing everything you can to make sure that they're being successful. In the end, it's up to them to do that or not. They're going to step up to that or they're not. But that's why I say develop the plan to where you can walk them through those steps, and then you can make a really easy decision very quickly, because I always say hire slow, fire fast. That's my adage, right? Like as soon as I see somebody's not right or they're going to be toxic, I'm going to take them through that process really quickly. I'm going to talk to them every day or every week and then say, okay, you're out, because I don't want you messing up with the rest of my workforce, But and then the same with hiring. You talked about this a lot of like, who are you hiring and how are you vetting, and can you do stages? You have to pay for them. You can't do an unpaid stage. Just know that I had to learn that recently. But when I hired for a job at the zoo 4 years ago, they made me come work an event for free. They made me come work to see how I worked with my donor base. Like you can do things to see how these people interact in the environment to protect yourself as well before you actually extend a formal offer.
Tracy, you talked about
just
something
real
else.
quickly, there are free resources in our community. Workforce Center is one of them, where we have assessment tools that employers could use to assess your employees or your potential employees before you actually hire them. One is the Approve It assessment, and just example is, I need someone to have really great Excel experience, and this person says they have great Excel experience, but let's put the proof in it. They come in, they take an assessment, you as the employer get the results, and we've done internally as an employer, we've done our hiring based on that way. There's another tool that's called Predictive Index, and that's more based on personality set. So you say you're in a sales position, but your Predictive Index scores says that you hate people. I would not go into sales, right? But it's those type of tools that are available out there and resources for employers that take advantage of and really look at the hiring, the process of being able to have the resources.
I think that's about all the time that we have, and I want to be respectful. Sorry, Colin. Those were really thoughtful questions. Thank you. I think our panel will be hanging around a little bit if you want to grab them one-on-one, but we do want to be respectful of your time. So thank you very much to our panelists. That was really great information.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Stacy Burns. I'm the VP of Business Innovation at the Better Business Bureau. A really quick thank you as well to Ms. Rachel Beck for moderating. She did a fantastic job and asked some great follow-up questions. So just a really quick informal poll. How many of you made it to our session yesterday? Awesome. How many of you are coming back tomorrow? Awesome. Thank you. That's good. That's helpful. We know we're on the right track. So for tomorrow is our day 4 of the series for Small Business Week. We have our emerging business trends tomorrow. So it'll be a rotating set of 3 sessions. One will be on cyber, one will be on mindfulness in the workplace, hosted by Kaiser, and then we also will have disruptive innovation, talking a little bit more about what Colin might have piqued your interest about today in terms of social impact, but also just how are you safely and strategically disruptive in the sector in creating new innovative ideas. And then Thursday, day 5, we have our Small Business Week Awards night. I think we still have online registration, but I'm guessing that's probably closing very soon so we can get our head count. So please join us for that night. It's well worth the money that you'll spend. It's a great group. It's a great evening. And we have some amazing nominees that are up for some great awards this year. So yes, and on behalf of the new silent generation, Gen X, I want to thank you all for coming today. And just one more round of applause for our panelists and our moderator.